This 2023 NFC East Season Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our Patreon. Score exclusive perks, content, and contests, including our NFL win totals contest with a $1,000 prize. Join today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app to get last-minute tickets at the lowest price guaranteed. Use promo code SGPN for $20 off. And we're also brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbooks. Download the app now and use code DGEN. New customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on any college football bet, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code DGEN. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Monday, August the 21st, currently 5:35 on the East Coast, here to get into another division for our season-long player props. And today, we'll be talking about one of the more exciting divisions, I guess we can say, the NFC East. And here to help me break it out down, I got my guys here with me. First, I got my guy here, Chris, with me. Chris, what's happening, my man?
What's up, Munaf? It's another week. Hopefully we can give out some more winners. And we always like to say new week, new money, whether we're betting season-long props or, just size, totals, over-unders, action for the day, whatever the case might be. So hopefully we can kind of keep, trending in that right direction. Excited to break this division down. Me and Rod talked about it last week. You kind of giving us the snooze fest divisions, to start, right? But we do have an exciting one for today, and I'm excited to break it down with you guys.
Yeah, this week we probably have two of the more exciting divisions, the NFC East, and then later this week we'll be doing the AFC West. So maybe saving the better ones for our as we approach, I guess, the home stretch for our player props with 4 divisions down, and I believe 4 more to go here. So definitely excited to get into it. Also, I got my guy here, Rod, with me. Rod, how's it feeling this Monday morning or afternoon, I should say?
Momentum definitely rolling in the right direction, like Chris said, toward a very we're getting into the good stuff now. This is where we're breaking down the good players, the better players in the league. So I'm excited, man. Always am. Always happy to talk NFL. Take a break from the NASCAR every once in a while, get into my first love, which was football.
There we go. NFC East today, like we mentioned, and we have obviously the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, the Washington Commanders, and of course, the defending NFC champs, I should say, the Philadelphia Eagles, who just fell a little bit short in their Super Bowl run last year, led by that prolific offense, led by Jalen Hurts. So one of the more fun divisions, I guess we can discuss here today. It's going to be a lot of fun to see where we kind of line up or if we have any agreement or some more disagreements in this division. So, gentlemen, let's just kick it right off. We'll start here with our first player props. Rod, lead us off, my man.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with the prolific passer that is Daniel Jones, but I'm going to go for his legs because I'm seeing right now that his rushing total prop is 575.5 rushing yards. I am smashing the under on this one at -120. I'm telling you right now, I understand it. I get it. I get that Daniel Jones had over 700 yards rushing last season, 708 to be exact. I fully understand Daniel Jones is a mobile quarterback and uses his legs to gain yardage, but I will give you Exhibit A of who he was actually throwing to last season. He had Darius Slayton. He had Richie James. He had Isaiah Hodgins. He had Saquon Barkley, Daniel Bellinger. This is not an all-star cast of wide receivers that he was throwing the ball to last season. There's a reason that he had to run that many times. There's a reason that he had, for the first time in his career, more than 10 carries or more than 9 carries really in a game, right? He had 6 games in which he had at least 10 carries, if not more. That's not going to happen this year. They bring in Darren Waller, right, to shore up and to give him an opportunity to have a pass catcher that had 1,000-yard ability, right? They brought in Paris Campbell from Indy, not a prolific pass catcher, but at least a competent one in his own right. They have made these strides to take the ball away from Daniel Jones's legs. He doesn't want to get banged up. They don't want him to get banged up. They would rather see him under this 525.5 rushing yard total, because that means he's completing more passes. That means he's throwing it more and putting the ball in his hands. So I think that because before, if you look at his totals before too, he had 298 in 2011. Granted, he didn't play a full season. He had 423 the year before that. Again, not a full season. 279, not a full season, but these aren't anywhere near really any 525 yards. And in fact, if it weren't for his game against the 107 yards that he rushed for in that game against Indianapolis late in the season, it was Jacksonville. Late in the season, he had 91 yards against Indy, but those games aren't going to exist next season, or this coming season, I guarantee you. So give me Daniel Jones under 525.5 rushing yards. Save him. He needs his arm more than his legs.
I feel like, this might be a down year for the New York Giants and Daniel Jones in particular. Like you mentioned, last year, this team finished up with a record of 7-9-1, if I'm not mistaken, something in that neighborhood, or was it 9-7-1? I might get my record mixed up here, but obviously it was the first year with Brian Daboll as the head coach for the New York Football Giants, and I guess a breath of fresh air for this team, right? They made the playoffs after so many years. Daniel Jones had a above average season, I guess we can say, from what we're really used to seeing. And you name some of the guys there that were on this roster, and the guys that he had to throw to. Darren Waller, I think, is a great addition for them via trade coming over from the Raiders. You also add Paris Gamble, like you mentioned there, Rod. But I think that you're right that historically we've seen, obviously with Brian Daboll when he was with the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen was also a scrambler for that Buffalo Bills team. So I think this number is going to be close. I particularly would lean slightly towards the over, but I think you make great counterpoints about, hey, that they added 2 more guys to this passing core that maybe, takes the pressure off of the legs of Daniel Jones and makes him maybe a passer in this league. But let's also not forget, last season, the New York Giants had the easiest schedule in all of NFL. And this season, I believe they have the 12th or 13th most difficult schedule now. So that's a significant change for this New York Giants team here. Chris, thoughts on Daniel Jones here as far as his rushing yards total?
Yeah, I'm actually right there with Rob. I almost lock this one in as my favorite, and I do like it. I like it a lot. I'll use another one just because Rod used this one, but I like it for all of the points that he made. I think there's a lot of things that kind of correlate. And when you get more talent around you so that you can do something else to be successful, then that's, that typically correlates with, you running the ball just a tad bit less. So I thought the number was a tad bit too high. And I think it's a great under spot. We always talk about unders getting a lot of value. Well, not the public doesn't like unders, but us as bettors try to be, call ourselves sharp bettors. I do think it's a spot that I would look towards the under on as well. I'll just leave it there. I think Rob made a lot of great points to kind of back it up, and some of those things I had in my notes as well.
All right, before we get over to our next player props, let me tell you guys that we are, actually it's here. Week 0, college football kicking off this weekend, and you've been waiting all year for some college football. I know we're in the midst of preseason for the NFL, but I guess we should say meaningful football is here, and it starts with college football. And so are the traditions, the tailgates, and the great offers from DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on any college football game. Side total, just bet $5. You'll get that $200 bonus instantly. Again, kick off the season this season with DraftKings Sportsbook. I believe Navy and Notre Dame are playing this weekend. College of football week 0. Again, plenty of more games. Download the app now. Make sure to use that promo code DGEN. That's DEGEN, DGEN. New customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 on any college football bet. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, like I mentioned, but make sure to use that promo code DGEN. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. If you're in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races, all games are regulated by the West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resorts. 20 years or older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms. And speaking of football season, and if you're looking to get out to a football game this season, whether it's college football, like I mentioned, NFL Week 1, or you still want to get out to a preseason game, or you still want to get out to a baseball game, you need to make sure to check out and get those tickets from Game Time. It takes sometimes a lot of months of planning to, get to a certain game, and you have to buy those tickets because you think they're going to be gone. Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore with Game Time because the app gives you tickets right up till game time. And sometimes they offer some significant discounts with killer deals on last-minute tickets. Their best prices are guaranteed. You can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're going to have. Some things I love about the Game Time experience, well, flash deals and last-minute tickets, like I mentioned, they're easy to find. You can buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, not just sporting events, but if you have, concerts going on in your area, you want to get out to a theater, it's all there on the Game Time app. But the best thing that I love about the Game Time app is when you go to buy those tickets, they actually show you an image of where you're going to be sitting in that particular venue, whether it is a sporting event, whether it's a comedy show, whether it is a theater that you're going to go out there and watch. Their lowest prices are guaranteed, event cancellation protection as well. And like I mentioned, forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, theater, like I mentioned. But to take advantage of it, all you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and make sure to use promo code SGPN for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download Game Time app. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices are guaranteed. All right, Chris, take us over to your player prop number 1, my friend. What do we got?
So let's stay with quarterbacks and let's stay with legs as well. I'm looking at Jalen Hurts, and I like his over on his rushing yards. So I know Rod said he's under on Daniel Jones. I like the over on Jalen Hurts. Number is 699 and a half. So 700 yards is the best number I could get. That number is over on FanDuel, and it's actually not a lot of juice, minus 110. So we're getting the standard price there. You can check other sports books. They do have it about 25 yards higher, 725, 726 on some books as well. Just looking at Jalen Hurts and how I kind of see this Philadelphia Eagles offense this year. Past 2 years, he carried. So let's just go for last year. Last year, he carried the ball 165 times, went over the number by 60 yards. Year before, 784 yards. So he went over the number as well. They bring in Rashad Penny, who I'm not like the biggest fan of. The Eagles will have one of the better offensive lines. And to me, when I think about that and watching the Eagles play, I just see wide receivers not able to get a ton of separation at all times, right? And then the play breaks down and we have a really good athlete, right? So this one was a simple cap for me. I think that Jalen Hurts gets 750 to 800 yards this season in a season where they are maybe potentially due to progress just a tad bit. Yep. Just because they, exceeded expectations and got all the way to the Super Bowl last year. But I like Jalen Hurts to go over the 699 and a half rushing yards this year using his legs.
Well, this kind of correlates into my player prop here as well. I'll get to my quarterback player prop second because it ties in very nicely with Chris, what you just mentioned about Rashad Penny, because I'm actually taking the under on him. And there's a lot of reasons that you just mentioned, right? Great offensive line for this Philadelphia Eagles team, top 3 in the league for sure, right? But that running back group room, you talk about DeAndre Swift that they picked up. You added Rashad Penny. You still have Kenneth Gainwell. And we also have a running quarterback in Jalen Hurts that 100% of the snaps when he's playing are the balls, or 99.9, I should say, let's have some type of gimmick plays. It's going to be in his hands, right? So I think this might be an MVP caliber year for Jalen Hurts. I think that's certainly in the possibilities. But when we talk about the running back group, if I had to take it over on a rushing yard prop, it would be what Chris you just mentioned with Jalen Hurts, which kind of led me to taking Rashad Penny to go under his rushing yard prop, and that number was at 600 and a half. And again, we talk about 4 guys that need the ball to run, or at least three guys. We talk about DeAndre Swift, like I mentioned, Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Hurts, what Chris just mentioned. There's only one football to go around. And let's not forget that they still have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown in the wide receiving group there, along with Dallas Goedert, that tight end position. So it's going to be really difficult for all of these guys to have a huge successful season as far as getting over their rush totals outside of Jalen Hurts, because you still have three guys in that backfield. But they also play a difficult schedule of rush defenses this year, including 9 games with teams rated inside the top 10 projected rush defenses. And a lot of those are within this division. I know we'll talk about that more as we kind of get into our player props here. But again, it's correlated with what Chris just mentioned. Over on Jalen Hurts makes a lot of sense. He's done it. He's running quarterback. We see that throughout his college career. We saw that as his first year as a full-time starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. And also, Rashad Penny is very injury-prone as well, right? We've seen that. He hasn't been able to stay healthy throughout his, first couple seasons in the NFL. So I took the under on 600.5 here rushing yards. Again, Chris correlates with what you mentioned here. So I know you just mentioned that you don't like Rashad Penny. You're not a fan of. Makes me feel even better about my bet here. But Rod, Jalen Hurts, Rashad Penny, talk about this running game.
So the Eagles rushed for 2,500 yards last season as a team, right?
Yep.
Obviously, you talk about Jalen Hurts having 760 of that. Miles Sanders had 1,200 of that. So you bring in DeAndre Swift, right? You think that he's probably going to get, I don't know that he'll get to 1,200, but maybe he'll get to 1,000, right? Maybe that's where his ceiling is. That still doesn't leave a lot because Kenneth Gainwell got 240. He's still there. Like, I don't know where Penny's going to really fit into this offense to get 600 yards if no other running back outside of either Gainwell or Boston Scott, who had 217 back in the day. That's kind of where I could see Rashad Penny fitting in that 217, maybe gets 300 yards, because there's already too many cooks back in that kitchen. So I don't know that they're going to find a place to fit Penny in. Seattle really didn't. So
yeah,
what makes them think that Philly with a stocked cupboard is going to be able to?
Yeah, I agree. So let me go back to my quarterback prop, and also has to talk about what Rod mentioned with Daniel Jones. You take his under on his rushing yards. I'm taking the under on his passing yards. That number is currently at, let me see, I think I found it at 3,300.5 for the upcoming season for Daniel Jones. And look, this division is facing a very tough schedule as far as schedule of pass defenses and rush defenses. Like we talked about it right now with Rashad Penny and the Philadelphia Eagles. So for the Giants, they face 9 teams as well with a pass defense ranked inside the top 10. That's 9 teams. Let's go even further. Let's take a step further. Let's talk about league average. 13 of their 17 opponents are projected to have an above league average pass defense, ranking 14th or better for this upcoming season. Daniel Jones hasn't gone over this projection of 33.5 passing yards at all in his career. Last season, that's where he got the closest, 3,205 passing yards. He did miss one game. But again, if you probably would have played in that game, he would have gotten over this this projected passing yards total for Daniel Jones. Health is also a concern with Daniel Jones, right? Last season was the first time he's played 16 games, and that's not a full season because we now have the 17th game. But going back to the prior 3 years in Daniel Jones's career, 13 out of 16 games, 14 out of 16 games, and 11 out of 16 games that he's played in. I know, like we mentioned when Rod talked about the weapons that they did add with Paris Campbell and also Darren Waller, who I am high on coming into this season. But I just feel like this is going to be a season where I think Daniel Jones probably going to hover around that 3,000 mark, 3,200 mark again. And again, like we talk about, injuries are always concerned with some of these players, including Daniel Jones that we talked about. So I'm going to take the under on Daniel Jones here. Rod, I know you mentioned you liked his under on his passing yards. Now, I may have to warn, at least for my Rod and self, that this may be our last time on the podcast, and Chris Kramer does listen to this episode. So just keep that in mind, Rod, as we kind of progress through this episode.
I don't think he's going to mind so long as they keep winning. It doesn't matter how they do it. They don't ask how, they just ask how many. So I think we're good on that case. But look, I could see this cashing even if Waller has a 1,200-yard season through the air, because who else, like I said, is left? Paris Campbell may get close to 1,000 yards, but that graveyard of everybody else around them is not going to account for like 2,000 more yards. It's not going to happen unless he can find a way to, make Richie James a thing. I don't know. So I see Waller getting a bulk of these catches and these yards, but there may not be that many to go around. So, I mean, I'm with you. It may be tough, though, because what if Paris Campbell does have a breakout year? And that's the only thing, if one gets 1,200, the other gets 1,200, then you're looking at 24. And now it's a little bit easier for the rest of those guys to kind of make up the difference. So that'd be my only concern. But, yeah, I mean, this team, they're going to win, but it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be flashy.
Chris, thoughts on Daniel Jones's passing yards for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I would agree. I think you guys made all the prerequisite points. I'm not really high on Daniel Jones, and the other thing that we always talk about, Munaf, is we hate to beat the dead horse, but it's the injury factor, right? Like, Can he stay healthy for the entirety of a season? We talked about this with other quarterbacks throughout the season, throughout the Propcast that we've done on previous shows. Yeah. Sometimes all it takes is 2 or 3 games for those guys to be missed, right? It could be a short injury, not even necessarily a long injury. And then, that prop, goes the way. So it's a lot. I think, I can't remember who the smart guy was who told me this, but they said that when you bet under, you're always winning your bet until the play goes over, right? Whether it's season long or, it's just for the day. So something to kind of take into consideration for all the overbettors. I like the under on this one.
Well, and not just the fact that the injury too, that you made it perfect, because with a quarterback, it's even more, because you're talking sometimes 500 yards, right? A couple of games is 500 yards, 250, whatever, sometimes more, depending on if they throw for more. So that's a big gap. A running back could be like 100, could be 150, but for a quarterback, we're talking, 500, 600 yards, which is immense to a final total.
All right, before we continue our player props here for the NFC East, let me tell everyone about the Sports Gambling Podcast Patreon. Make sure you check out our Patreon. Sign up for the Patreon to get access to exclusive contests, including the NFL Win Totals contest with a $1,000 first place prize. The guys just recorded their first Sports Gambling Podcast Stories podcast just for the patrons, chronicling the birth of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. There's even a Discord channel just for patrons. And the Sports Gambling Podcast has and always will give out their picks for free. The Patreon is a great way to support the network and fight back against corporate gambling. Again, get all the details over at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. August is almost over. I think we're about a week away, or maybe 10 days away from August ending. And you know what that means? Time is running out for you to draft your fantasy football teams, because football is almost here. And make sure you're doing it over at Underdog Fantasy. Get championship ready for your home league by trying out Best Ball on Underdog Fantasy. All you have to do is one live snake draft. No waivers, no trades. You set it, forget it, and Underdog does the rest of the work. Try it out with Underdog's Best Ball Mania Tournament, the largest fantasy football contest of all time, with $15 million of total prizes up for grabs, including an absurd $3 million going to the winner. Do you have what it takes to win it all? The time is now. The last draft to draft your fantasy football team is September 7th. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com and find them in the App Store and sign up with promo code SGPN to get your first deposit doubled of up to $100. Again, that's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure to use the promo code SGPN. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Rod, take us over to player prop number 2, my friend. What do you got?
All right, let's go to the Eagles again. Let's talk about their wide receiver, their prolific wide receiver, A.J. Brown. I love the over on his 15. Well, actually, I love his over. His over's at like only 1,000 yards. It's insane. Smash that first and foremost, because that's
you took mine, right?
So I won't steal it, because I found one even better that I like. AJ Brown, this is DraftKings offering this. AJ Brown to have 1,500 or more receiving yards at 6-1. Plus 600 for 1,500 yards. Now you say to me, Rod, that's a gigantic number. Yes, it is. He was only 4 yards away from hitting that last season. I understand that the previous 3 years, he hadn't even sniffed that, right? 1,051, 1,075, 869 in the 3 years with Tennessee. He was in Tennessee. Nobody throws the ball in Tennessee when you got Derrick Henry, right? I mean, it was tough for him to really come out of his shell. Now, I think you've seen the true AJ Brown unleashed and what he can honestly do in an offense that is as wide open as Philadelphia's is. We talked about Jalen Hurts rushing the ball a lot. They all rushed the ball a lot, and yet still AJ Brown was still able to get 1,496 yards. That is even with Devontae Smith getting over 1,000 yards himself, right? And Dallas Goedert finding a way to 700. Now, the reason that AJ Brown did not get up to this number was he had a few games where he left some stuff on the table, most notably that game against Washington where he only had one catch for 7 yards in that game, right? Imagine if he would have been able to play a full game in that. You think he would have been able to get 4 more yards on at least one more catch, 5 more yards anyways to cash this bet? I absolutely think he would have. You know, guy got monster games in him, 10 for 155 week 1, right? He turns another one, 8 for 119, 9 for 181. He's explosive. And now that this offense has really taken advantage of him, I think we're on to something here. I love, obviously, Chris will make a better argument for his over, but give me 1,500 plus yards at 6-1. It just doesn't seem like, it just seems like that's something that you should be able to get to. And it may take you all 17 weeks to get there, but when he gets 1,500, you're going to be a very happy person by the end of the year. So yeah, give me that. AJ Brown, 1,500 more yards on DraftKings at plus 600.
I like it. I mean, look, I think that number one, you nailed it when you talked about with the Titans. It was run heavy. We talked about this when we did the AFC South preview. We talked about this when we did it on the Propcast as well. Player props that offense was centered around King Henry. Their run first offense. They're a blue collar type of team. They like to get down and dirty, and that's how they win games over in Tennessee. Where you talk about Philadelphia, it's more of a finesse, right? This defense, I think, is still going to be terrible. That's going to have to propel them to throw the football. Maybe not the front seven, but maybe the secondary is not going to be very good for this Philadelphia Eagles team. And we saw it multiple times last season that they were involved in shootouts, right? I think it was the first or second week where they played the Lions that they were in a shootout and they scored, 70+ points. So, again, I think that for AJ Brown, and it's just really AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, right? I think it's not like those two guys are going to feast. We saw it last year, and again, I really like at 6-1. He was 4 yards away last season, where he only played in what would you mention? He played in 17 games, but he fell probably one catch short of getting to that mark of 1,500 for last season at least. So, yeah, I like it, especially at the value of 6-1. A bit of a breaking news in the NFL. We'll touch on that after we get Chris's thoughts about AJ Brown, and he also has a player prop on AJ Brown. Take it away, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, you guys took all the great points, so I'll just reiterate them all over again. But 1,050 yards. I'm a little more chicken than Rod at the 6-1, but I do think it's great value, like Rod said, for all the different points that he made. But 1,050 yards at -110 seems like a steal for this guy. And what you alluded to, we talked about it, like you said, when we did, the Titans, when we did the podcast with the Titans, but run heavy offense there. And that was just his first year. We're talking about a very, durable receiver, doesn't miss games. He has, big catch radius, big 6'1" wide receiver who can stretch the field. And Jalen Hurts, man, it was kind of his coming out party. I know you guys remember a couple years ago when we were kind of wondering how long Jalen Hurts was going to have a job. Like this dude was terrible just a couple years ago. And I think we've just kind of, tipped the iceberg at what this offense can be. We talked about, a little bit already about how good their offensive line is and, just the expectations for this offense. I don't know, if Jalen Hurts gets to his number, I think I would lean more towards the over. But I do think that it'll be ample opportunities for a guy like AJ Brown to go out there and be able to make play after play. If you mentioned their defense, you mentioned that secondary, specifically the back of the secondary not being great, right? When you give up those big plays, that's when your offense has to go back on the field even more. So we just, it could be some shootouts with this, with this team, based on the schedule that they have this year. So for all of those reasons, give me AJ Brown, like Rod said, 4 yards short of 1,500. So to put this at last season, so to put this at 1,050 feels like a really, really, really big discount and a bargain that we may see go up. So maybe this is a player prop that you want to take, now maybe rather than wait until a little bit later. But 1,050.5, you can lock that in on DraftKings right now, and I did.
From Tennessee's last season in Tennessee to this first year in Philly, 25 more receptions last season. And then he had 40 more targets as well with the Philadelphia Eagles last season. So it looks like it should be if Philadelphia does pick up where they left off last season as far as offensively and being able to score points at A.J. Brown, at least in the passing game, will be the focal point along with Devontae Smith. I alluded to it earlier, a little bit of breaking news. Maybe we could briefly touch on it at the end of our episode here. But Adam Schefter reporting that the Colts have actually granted permission for Jonathan Taylor to actually seek a trade from that team. So we could, we will briefly touch on it and see if there's something that maybe we could team that we can dig up to see where he does land. But I believe that is everybody's 2 props each. Let's get over to our last round. Rod, lead us off.
Yes, sir. Let's go to Washington, the mostly ignored Commanders. Let's go to Terry McLaurin, probably the one bright spot on that team. I found another little fun doozy over on DraftKings that gives you Terry McLaurin to have at least 75 or more receiving yards in 8 or more individual regular season games. This is at -110. It's not sexy. It's not super sexy, but this is a way for you to get in on Terry McLaurin to do something that he's fully capable of doing. I know 8 games seems like a ton, especially now that we're into the 17-game season. You're going to want to have it done more. But he came close to this last year. I think he was 1 game short. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, so he did hit this. He was 1 game short. I'm sorry, 1 game short of this last year. But again, this is a team that is going to be behind a lot. They're going to need to throw a lot. Terry McLaurin has played all 17 games in 2 seasons in a row. So that means he's on the field. That means he's capable of being able to get out there. And they don't have much help past Terry. I mean, they have Curtis Samuel. Okay, he's a dude. That's fine. They have Jahan Dotson. I get that he's super flashy and sexy. But when you just take a look at what the Commanders have done overall anyways in this, it's really come down to Terry McLaurin, and it wasn't even close. Like, Terry had 1,191 yards last year. Samuel had 656. Dotson had 523. This year, who's throwing them the ball? I don't know. It could be Sam. Well, Sam Howell was named the starter. Yes. But how long is Jacoby Brissett going to wait for that to happen? Right. It's a matter of who's going to throw him the ball. It doesn't matter at this point, though, because he had a whole lot of people throwing him the ball last year too, and he still managed to get over 1,000 yards. So he is a guy that can get 75 yards a game. Like I said, he was one game short of that. He did it in his rookie season. He hit this mark. So we need to see more of that. And I think the Commanders need to see more of that to be successful. So again, the prop is Terry McLaurin to have 75 or more receiving yards in 8 or more individual regular season games. Find that on DraftKings at -110. Like I said, it's probably the only thing Washington's got going for him this season.
I mean, I agree with this, but with the point that you made that they are going to be playing from behind and probably most of their games. I know they have a couple games in their first week against the Cardinals. That's definitely winnable. And then you have the Rams, but they are going to be on the West Coast for that. But they're not favored in very many games this upcoming season. In fact, they're only favored in 2 games all of this season. And I think 2 games are at Pick'em, but it makes a lot of sense that, again, this team will be playing from behind. I know they have a really great front 7 led by, Chase Young and that group, but you still have to score points at the end of the day to win football games, especially in the National Football League. So in Terry McLaurin, like you mentioned, Scary Terry, he's been one of the more consistent, if not the most consistent receiver for the Washington Commanders in I don't know how long. I've had him on my fantasy team for the I think they're not this last season, but the season prior, where he was absolutely fantastic. I was trying to find a Commanders prop as well, Rod. I just couldn't get there. I was looking for some Sam Howell props, but I don't think they've released those yet. But I think if you are going to play an over, I think, your best bet is probably on backing Terry McLaurin in some type of way here. Chris, thoughts on Scary Terry for this upcoming year?
Hey, first off, I want to say now I know what it feels like to do the pod when we talk about the Texans all the time, because me being a Commanders fan, everything you guys are saying feels factual and real, and it just breaks my heart just a tad bit more. Every word that's spewed, but I would agree, man. Scary Terry is the only thing that we really have cooking over there, in Washington as far as production wise, and to Rod, in all seriousness, to Rod's point. He'll have ample opportunity. I know you mentioned, Commanders playing from behind, which is something that they typically do in general. Very slow-paced team, one of the worst offensive teams year after year. But he is going to be, that consistent guy, no matter who the quarterback is, like Rod said. So I would agree with this one. I think Rod's a lot more creative with his props. I gotta start doing a little bit more, checking out those DraftKings extra, incentive props, because I would have probably just looked at his yards in general. But Commanders being down, majority of the game, most likely, he'll go up there. He can catch the ball. Very good catch radius. I like a lot about Scary Terry. So I would play the over on this one. It was, Rod, you said 8 games of at least 75 yards, right? Yeah.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a steal.
Crystal, you are the Commanders fan.
Unfortunately, yes.
I know it's okay. But obviously there's definitely potential there, right? We talked about Scary Terry. Jahan Dotson was believe he had 8 touchdowns last year, if I'm not mistaken. I know the yardage wasn't there for him. The running back group, led by Brian Robinson, and the comeback story from him is absolutely fantastic. And Antonio Gibson at a point, was really good, but it really does come down to that, quarterback position at Sam Howell. Do you believe in it, or do you think that eventually, what I personally think is that Ron Rivera is probably his last season, then Eric Bieniemy kind of takes over the head coaching job, and then brings in the quarterback of his choice, or probably through a draft or in some form or fashion. What were your thoughts on the future of the Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, the future of the Commanders at the quarterback position, is like, the future of the stock market. We just never know which way it's going to go. It changes, it fluctuates up and down. And, we're constantly just getting new things in and out all the time. It's really difficult for the Commanders to get a solid quarterback, and for that quarterback to stay, even when we, have one in Kirk Cousins who couldn't get us necessarily over the hump. We didn't re-sign him. We didn't want to, give him all the money in the world that, maybe he deserved, maybe he didn't. But, to be a great franchise, you typically have to have a great quarterback that's sustainable, right? Because it takes the offense a few years to kind of get going. And then, for players to kind of come in, learn the system, buy into the system, you have to retain those weapons that you have, whether it's offensive linemen or, it's great pass catchers. And that's the revolving door for the Washington Commanders. Is that quarterback position that never can seem to have one that lasts a little bit longer than more than a season or two, unfortunately, as painful as that makes my heart.
All right, Chris, take us over to your last player prop, man. What do you got?
So let's go over to Dallas, and I'm looking at the guy that's actually taken over for Zeke. Now that Zeke is went over to New England, and I'm looking at Tony Pollard. I like his yards to actually go over. You can get this number. He's just at 1,500 yards. And of course, we know what Zeke did for this team last year. If you just go back and kind of, look over those carries, Zeke had 231 carries to Tony Pollard's just 193 carries, and they got Zeke up out of there. I mean, clearly, I think people have been saying it and kind of seeing it for a while, that Tony Pollard was the better back. He was the younger back. And he already, eclipsed this number with another running back getting 230 carries last year. So his carries was only at 193 last year. He averaged well over 5 yards a carry. He's a pretty explosive back with, averaging 63 yards per game. And if he can do that again, he set out, I think it was the last game of the season, with that thigh injury. Yeah, week 17, he had that thigh injury. But other than that, this guy was a monster for this team. So, and just a couple other numbers that I looked at across 15 games that they played together. I mentioned the 231 to 157 carries that Ezekiel Elliott had over him. But, Pollard, he proved to be, much better back. 24th is where he ranks among 24 running backs. I'm sorry. With 190 carries. Pollard actually ranked 4th in Pro Football rushing grade. He was 2nd in yards per carry and 1st in yards after contact per attempt as well. 2nd in breakaway percentage as well. So he has that big play capability. And I think, with the offense kind of Jerry Jones and the guys kind of turning over the keys to him and getting Zeke up out of there, I think he has a big season to kind of, just alleviate some of the pressure that, Dak Prescott is going to have to, withstand, losing a couple of his other guys as well, because there's a tight end turnover as well. And wide receiver turnover there as well. So give me Tony Pollard to go over the 1,000. He just needs 1,001 rushing yards, and this number is wildly available.
Yeah, I mean, you just take a look. I mean, the one thing that kind of sticks out about his career stats, I mean, you just take a look at it, 5.1 yards per carry for his career, right? 3 out of 4 seasons, he's had 5.2 yards per carry or better in his first 4 seasons. And now he's going to be the full-time back for this Dallas Cowboys team. And like you mentioned, Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head, is that to take some of that pressure and limit the turnover, probability that Dak Prescott presents, throwing interceptions. Tony Pollard can, help mitigate some of that, right? With his ability, not only in the running game, but also in the passing game, right? We've seen it that he can also, be a nice pass catcher for this Cowboys team. And he has that big playability. I mean, take a look at some of his longest rushes throughout the season. And again, there are going to be more if you kind of go down the list, but 44 yards long reception, rush attempt, 42, 58, 57. So he has that big playability. So again, they let Zeke go for a reason. And like you mentioned, that this should be a big season for Tony Pollard, and for him to get at least 1,001 or 1,002 rushing yards for this upcoming season is definitely in the cards, because last season, 193 carries, 1,007 rushing yards, 5.2 yards per carry, and a career high, I should say, 63 yards per game on the ground, at least, for Tony Pollard here, Rod.
I wonder how big the party was that Tony Pollard threw when he found out that Zeke was leaving officially. I wanted to be, I wonder how many bottles were popped that day. Because listen, that dude was waiting patiently for that to happen. He knew, and it's like a race car driver who just stalks the person in front of them. They know they're faster. They know that they can overtake them. They're just letting the dude in front burn out and cut all the air. And then when the time is right, they sail past him. That's what Tony Pollard was doing. He's just buying his time. He knew he was in a good situation. He could have probably pressed for a trade a long time ago and said, hey, listen, man, if you're not going to use me, let me go someplace where I can be of use. But no, he chilled. He was like, I'm waiting. And then once Zeke left, now is his time. And I think we are going to see the best of Tony Pollard, because we saw what Zeke did in this offense for so very long, right? He was one of the more dominant backs in the entire league. So Pollard gets an opportunity to show that he waited and it wasn't in vain, and that he can actually do something. And I think he is. I think you're absolutely right, guys. I think he's going to come out. I think he's going to make a lot of fantasy managers quite happy, honestly. So they're going to make a lot of bettors happy as well over the course of the season.
Also, Dallas comes in with a top 10 ranked offensive line as well. So that only helps, obviously, when we talk about rushing yard overs for a respective player. All right, for my last player prop, gentlemen, we mentioned this guy earlier, Darren Waller, over 600.5 receiving yards. I'm taking the over on that. I feel like this number is a little bit low, right? I know that, number one, Darren Waller, when he was with the Raiders, had 2 seasons where he was absolutely an all-pro. And he's kind of fallen off when we talked about a couple seasons ago, maybe 3 to 4 years ago, when we talked about some of the top tight ends in the league, whether it was for fantasy purposes or just overall on the field. It was Travis Kelce, it was George Kittle, and Darren Waller's name was in their conversation as well. But I know over the last 2 seasons, at least, he's dealt with injuries. He's played only a combined 20 games for the Raiders. But now he goes over to a Giants team via trade, and we've already seen some of the training camp highlights and some of the stuff in preseason ball with Darren Waller. Going back to the 2019-2020 season, he had 1,100 receiving yard seasons in those 2 years. And again, I know for Darren Waller, it's about staying on the field and being healthy. But I think that he now, number one, is going to be healthy because, again, cashed in very big this offseason, and Chris can allude to this, getting married to KP this offseason and Kelsey Plum. But I think this is going to only help. And we talked about Daniel Jones, that some of the weapons may be a little bit limited, but now that gives you a legitimate tight end option here on Darren Waller, who, like I mentioned, has been all pro at least 2 years when he was with the Raiders. So again, we talk about injuries. It is a concern with Darren Waller, but I think he's healthy now. He's looking good for this Giants team, and all reports out of camps is that he's having a good time, or he's fitting into the offense very well, that I think Daniel Jones is going to be able to utilize him. Now, it's not a big number either, 600.5. I think we're kind of getting a buy low situation here because of the injuries that he's dealt with over the last 2 seasons. So Darren Waller over 600.5 receiving yards for the upcoming season here, Rod.
He's becoming the de facto wide receiver 1. Like literally that's what he's slotting into. So you're telling me that I know that their output last season was abysmal. I mean, it wasn't good like Richie and all those guys, Darius Slayton. But I mean, you're getting Darren Waller it's like the Kyle Pitts without looking like the wide receiver 1 basically. So, 650.
600.5. Yeah. 601 he needs.
601.
Yeah.
He can get twice that. Like this is probably going to hit after 7 games of the season. If not 6, give me the over on this one and not even close.
Chris, thoughts on Darren Waller?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add, the only hesitation, you mentioned it already, is his ability to kind of stay on the field. He played 9 games last year and 11 games the year before. And it's crazy because 2 years ago, he still cleared this number, even on playing 11 games. So that makes it even more of a point, But I think both of you guys just made a lot of great points on it. The other thing I wanted to mention was that Daniel Jones uses his tight end, right? Like if you go back and look at the numbers, Daniel Jones is a quarterback who loves his tight end. So it'll be a lot of dump downs. Darren Waller is one of the better route running tight ends in the NFL. He has a big catch radius. So I think that, collaboration and connection is only going to do really good things. And I would go out to venture what Rod said, like maybe he could even double this number. So I like it as well.
So let me correct myself. It is 640.5. You can find that number over on FanDuel. Right now I'm looking at it. Some of the other books have it right around 700 and a half, 701, but FanDuel right now has it at 640.5 for Darren Waller for this upcoming season. All right, guys, before we get over to bets, like I mentioned, Jonathan Taylor does get the permission from the Indianapolis Colts to officially seek a trade. Kind of putting you guys on the spot here, but any teams that do come to mind as a potential landing spot where you insert Jonathan Taylor that puts this team maybe not over the top, but makes them a legitimate, maybe dark horse or a threat at least to win the Super Bowl or at least get to the Super Bowl, or maybe he's that guy that kind of puts him over the top to at least get a playoff spot here, because we've seen what Jonathan Taylor has been able to do since coming into this league. I mean, a multiple-time rushing yards. I think he led the rushing league, in rushing yards. You take a look at what he's done in the course of his career to start the year. In his career, 3,841 yards total. The first 2 seasons, he came out 1,169 yards. The second season, 1,811. Last season was an injury-riddled season for him, but he still got 861 yards in 11 games for the Indianapolis Colts. Rod, any team that does come to mind here that would propel or really help having the services of Jonathan Taylor?
I mean, I hate to say it. Well, I know because they got Kenneth Walker. So maybe Tampa. I mean, it doesn't put them in like actual needing. Doesn't put them into Super Bowl contention right away, but they sure as hell need a running back. And they got Rashad White, Chase Edmonds, like those guys. They're not at the level of Jonathan Taylor, either one of them. So if Tampa were to grab them, it would at least take some pressure off of Baker Mayfield. Like I said, it's not going to put him in Super Bowl contention. He probably will only talk to people in Super Bowl contention, but all of those guys have already got some pretty decent running backs at their disposal, right? Like you're not going to go to Philly. You're not going to go to San Francisco. You're not going to go to Kansas City. Buffalo, you're probably not going to go there. They've kind of made their bed with their their running backs. So where's he going to go that can instantly win a Super Bowl or a championship?
I don't think maybe instantly wins the Super Bowl. I think the one team, I don't know why this was one team that popped into my mind that could really use his services and maybe have a really lethal running game and takes a lot of pressure off of the quarterback. Chicago Bears. I know they have Khalil Herbert that, again, he could have a good season. We've seen flashes of him, but you add Jonathan Taylor to that backfield. Now you really have to worry about this running game, and maybe that opens up the passing game for Justin Fields. But we've seen what Justin Fields can also do with his legs. And again, if you want to really get creative with those two guys, I think that's a great spot for Jonathan Taylor. Minnesota also came to mind to me as well. I know Dalvin Cook is now gone from there, but you still have a Jonathan Taylor's entering his 5th season in the NFL. was going to mention something else, but Chris, any team that does come to mind here for Jonathan Taylor?
I think you guys picked some pretty solid ones. I don't know why, this doesn't work at all. But to me, I'm not a big Cam Akers guy, so I was thinking maybe send him to the Rams. But I know some people a little higher on Cam Akers than I am. But I think with them still having Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson, and you get back some of those injuries from last year. Long shot, maybe that's the kind of team that comes to my mind. I'm just not a big Cam Akers fan, so I think he could kind of help their offense and take some of that pressure off a guy like Stafford.
I think Chicago, with the trade that they made with the Panthers for the first overall pick, have that draft capital. But I think maybe another intriguing team that's dealt with injuries in their backfield, Baltimore Ravens. Maybe, I don't know. I think that might be a good spot.
Happens in that one.
They have too many good running backs with the quarterback and
yeah. And again, now I think that the things that we've read with the new offensive coordinator that they want to open up the passing game where they were so run heavy over the past several seasons against under the former offensive coordinator in Greg Roman. So yeah, kind of kicking the tires on Jonathan Taylor, but it'll be interesting where he does actually end up. If he does end up on a at least a playoff team, maybe not a Super Bowl contending team. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap up this episode with our best bets for the NFC East division. Rod, why don't you lead us off?
I mean, not just because it's the one with the longest odds, but I think it's just my favorite altogether. A.J. Brown to have 1,500 or more receiving yards on the year. It's 6-1. I mean, like I said, you're going to probably have to wait on this one all season long. But in week 16, maybe in week 17, when he gets 1,500, you're going to be a happy person. You're going to be thanking past you for the steak dinner that you're going to be having the next day when this fund hits your account.
There you go. Best bet for Rod, A.J. Brown to have at least 1,500 receiving yards at 6-1. Currently over on DraftKings. Chris, best bet for the NFC East. What do you got?
I'm going to keep it simple. I got to go with Pollard. I just think, like somebody losing 231 carries, him getting he won't get all 231 carries. Of course not. Right. But he got the number that I need to get last year, and somebody on his team ran 230 times. Like that just so 1,000, I think it was 1,000, just 1,001 yards, something that he already got last year, being the focal point. You mentioned, taking that pressure off of Dak Prescott, who can be a little turnover prone, a little turnover happy as well. Dallas, relied a lot on their defense to kind of slow offenses down. I think we thought that they would be a little bit more productive. And they have, they did lose Dalton Schultz, right? They've lost some of those other guys. And I think, just you look at Tony Pollard, I think they franchise tagged him as well, right? So even more incentive for him to come out and, just want to have a really good season. I think he, probably looks forward to being the focal point and not the guy that's kind of getting the scraps that's left over. So give me Tony Pollard over the 1,500 rushing yards this year at pretty much even money, -110.
As one of our good friends likes to say, Chris, 1 + 1 = 2. Again, the math kind of really adds up there, especially when we talked about Zeke having the amount of carries that he had. Now that goes over to a guy like Tony Pollard, who, like you mentioned, already went over this number and the amount of carries that he did have last season. All right, for my best bet, I am going to go with Rashad Penny under 600.5 rushing yards. And again, not going to expand too much on it. Just go back and look to our handicap on why we like the under for Rashad Penny. But again, just the gist of it. It's one football. You have 4 different runners, including your quarterback in Jalen Hurts that, likes to run the football as well. And again, injury has been a concern all throughout the career for Rashad Penny. Again, I think they may just utilize him in that goal-to-goal situation where instead of having that tush push with Jalen Hurts, that you turn around and hand it off to Rashad Penny. But as far as his rushing yards, I should say, under 600.5 as my best bet for this upcoming season. For the NFC East. And that is going to do it for the NFC East season-long player props episode here. 5 divisions down, 3 more to go. We'll be back this later week on Wednesday for the AFC West in our player props. Another fun division with the teams and the skill positions that we have there in that division. But Rod, anything else we want to mention before we get out of here, my friend?
No, sir. I think we covered it all. This will be a fun one to watch play out. I mean, obviously the Eagles are probably going to do what they're going to do, but I think the scrap for second place in this division will be a lot of fun. to watch. But yeah, in the meantime, follow me on Twitter at RJ Villa Gomez. There's a link in the bio, everything I got going on. Be too long, we'd be here another hour if I told you that. So just find it all over there on Twitter or X, however you want to say it.
Damn it. I was like, shit, he said Twitter. I got him to say Twitter. Chris, anything else, my man, before we get out of here?
Oh man, I just kind of piggybacking off what Rod said. I think, man, this NFC East division is always one that it's just kind of up in the air, man. It's always.
It goes to the point that like we haven't had a back-to-back division winner in I don't know how many years. So you're right.
I was born, it's always a team that overperforms. It's always a team that don't really overperform because you always expect them to kind of play poorly, but somebody got to win games, right? So I think kind of watching, who's going to finish in second place is going to be, really interested in almost as a coin flip. So I'm excited. Of course, my Washington Commanders are in this division as well. So, my eyes will be glued and locked in there. As far as all my work, you guys can follow me over on Twitter at Crispy Captain, 2 P's, 2 N's. And that's it. I'm looking forward to getting into, I feel like we're kind of hitting our stride with, some of this talent. So excited to hear what you guys have for the next pod, as well as we get into, what is it, the AFC West?
AFC West, next episode. We have 3 divisions left. And this is a good reminder. If you haven't listened to the previous pods we've done now, this is our 5th one. So go back and listen to the previous 4 if you haven't already. Still plenty of time before NFL week 1 that kicks off on September 7th. So you still have a couple weeks to get to the previous 5, including this one. And then we still have 3 more divisions that we're going to get into over the course of this week. And then the final 2 we will do next week. And then I will come up with something fun for the final, that bye week before that calm before the storm, before we get into actual NFL week 1 prep. Appreciate everybody that listened to us. If you haven't already, leave us a rating and review. You can follow me on Twitter at SportsNerd824. More importantly, just download the SGPN app. And do us a favor if you want to support the network, since all of our content is for free. Join the Patreon for the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. All right, we'll be back later this week. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.